We've also found with this niche market, our average tenant stay is pretty long. So
Okay.
it's been 5.1 years as our average tenant stay. Sometimes tenants will stay 1 year, and also in a lot of cases, we've had tenants there since we completed the initial renovation.
Are you tired of gambling your hard-earned savings with the casinos of Wall Street? Don't you wish you could generate passive cash flow from tangible assets that produce proven in-demand products? Our friends at Agronosotros allow passive investors to participate alongside them in their sustainable agricultural projects. So now you can caffeinate your cash flow with the second most traded commodity in the world after oil, coffee, and sweeten up your returns with high-end artisanal chocolate. Diversify your portfolio and participate in coffee and cacao farms in Panama that are turnkey, managed for you, with farming, processing, and product sales all done for you. And you impact the lives of subsistence farmers by helping provide housing and education through their socially sustainable programs. To find out more, go to wealthandfreedomnexus.com/coffee. That's wealthandfreedomnexus.com/coffee.
Are you tired of trying to keep ahead in the rat race, only to have so much of your hard-earned money going to the tax collector? Equity doesn't pay the bills. Retirement savings don't pay you now, and there are only 24 hours in a day to work. The only solution is passive income that pays you 24/7 now, not 40 years from now. From vetted investment opportunities to tax saving strategies, let John guide you through all the confusion and take control of your financial life in pursuit of financial freedom. So sit back, relax, and welcome to the Wealth and Freedom Nexus.
Taxes are your biggest expense. The best way to reduce your burden is real estate. Increase your income with amazing returns and reduce your taxable income with real estate write-offs. As an employee with a high salary, you're devastated by taxes. Lighten your burden with real estate tax incentives. You can offset your income with a W-2 job and from capital gains. Freedom Family Investments is the experienced partner you've been looking for. Our Real Estate Insider Fund is the vehicle. This fund invests in real estate projects that make an impact, and you can join us with as little as $50,000. Insiders get preferred returns of 10 to 12%. This means you get paid first. Insiders enjoy cash flow on a quarterly basis, and the tax benefits are life-changing. Join the Freedom Family and become a real estate insider. Start on your path to financial freedom through passive income. Text FAMILY to 66866. That's family to 66866. This is not a solicitation. Please text regarding this opportunity for complete details. This is for accredited investors only.
Hey there, welcome back to another great episode of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. As always, I'm John Rickgarn, your host, investor, educator, and realtor. Hard to believe this is episode 93. When I started this podcast about 2 years ago, I wanted to build a long runway and didn't want to succumb to pod fade and really get a good educational platform out there. But I never would have honestly envisioned I would make it this far. And ironically, still have quite a bit of a runway. I actually have podcast recordings or even ideas, if you will, queued up through the end of 2023, going into 2024. So this is your first time joining us. Thank you for your time, for coming across this podcast. If I can just have you be so kind to hit that subscribe button or that bell icon on YouTube so you never miss an episode, as well as share with another like-minded individual. I'm always, learning every day, and I'm always connecting with more people every day that just aren't familiar with all that is out there as far as financial education is concerned. Trust deed investing, like I talked about back in episode 57. That's been a kind of a trending topic area, trending download. I actually just had another person that I was interviewed on their podcast, And they were wondering about trust deeds. How did they work? What were they all about? What was the minimum investment? Did you have to be accredited, et cetera, et cetera? So, I think knowledge is power, applied knowledge is power. And I feel, content like this, as well as other educational platforms, should be shared with anyone. I don't think that we should be keeping this, talk track or content or education a secret. I think we should try to share it as much as we can with as many people as we can. So again, feel free to rate, review, subscribe to this channel, and share with other like-minded individuals that might find value in this content that I produce every single week on Wisdom Wednesday. So with that, for those who are returning to this platform, you probably might remember some of the previous podcasts, talking about turnkey providers or real estate markets, Oklahoma City, Memphis, Tennessee, Dayton, Ohio, just to name a few. Coming up, we're actually going to have a little bit of a spotlight on Cleveland, Ohio. So again, just a little teaser. If you aren't subscribed to this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on that episode. But this week, I actually wanted to center on a state, but also center on, within an MSA or metropolitan statistical area of that state. And that is Des Moines, Iowa. Now, for those maybe not familiar with that area or those listening overseas, Iowa is a state in Midwest United States, is just to the south of where I live in Minnesota. Now, Iowa is not a market that tends to get a lot of traction. If you go on Bigger Pockets, you're probably going to see a ton of info or noise, if you will, on Texas, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee, like I mentioned, a lot of those up and coming sexy markets, if you will. Now, Iowa has a really unique story to it, and full transparency, I've invested in Iowa. I actually have a duplex in Davenport. When I researched this area, I felt there's a little bit more potential in the Davenport or Quad Cities area. However, I didn't want to ignore the Des Moines area. Des Moines is the state capital of the state of Iowa, so right, wrong, or indifferent, the state capitals tend to be very recession resilient, and obviously with the government footprint, obviously leads into other jobs, be it finance, industry, manufacturer, etc. So Des Moines is definitely still on my radar. I have not invested with them yet, but definitely foresee that in the future. Now, this guest is a creator of a smaller turnkey product, Turnkey Iowa. They're not as big as, Mid-South or Spartan Invest, which I've had on this podcast before. If you, again, just joining in with us, be sure to go to YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Just search through the previous episodes. You can find those where I've touched base on with those turnkey providers. So Turnkey Iowa is a little bit smaller. I actually met the owner, Chad, about a little over 2 years ago when I did a site visit to Iowa. Really liked their operations, really liked how they picked their properties, did like the potential of Des Moines. It wasn't really on the radar for a lot of people. But like I said, at the time, I just decided to go into Davenport. At the moment, I thought there was a little bit more growth opportunity and more potential there, but easily see going into Des Moines in the next few years. Now, as a little disclaimer, versus the Spartan and Mid-South and table investments that I've had on where they vertically integrate all their structures, Turnkey Iowa is not a property management company. They actually outsource their property management to a different company. They are just solely the company that finds the homes, buys them, rehabs them, and then resells them to investors. Now, initially, I was a little, shall we say, turned off by this. I didn't want to have more fingers in the honeypot, so to speak, as well as fingers pointing at each other of, oh, it's the property manager's fault. No, it's the turnkey provider's fault, etc. But there are some advantages to having separate companies, advantages and disadvantages, just as there are with having a vertically integrated company as well. So with that, I was like, all right, I'm definitely going to still keep them in mind. Full transparency, Chad, the owner of Turnkey Iowa, is a real estate investor himself, and he utilizes the same property management company that he refers investors to. So he definitely still has some skin in the game, so to speak. So he's not going to be referring his investors, his clients to an entity that isn't going to take care of themselves or their properties. So with that, I'll get into today's podcast. Just as a quick little heads up, if you want to just do a quick Google or DuckDuckGo search, there's a lot of interesting features about Iowa that I don't think get a lot of mainstream news. And one thing I did just want to point out is that the state of Iowa is a leader in wind energy. In fact, over half of the state's electricity actually comes from wind generation. Now, if you're one that is looking for sustainable, go green resources, and this kind of maybe intrigues you, this definitely is kind of a plus of the state. And just like many areas of the Midwest, the wind does seem to be blowing more days than it's not. So if there's ways to harness this energy, provide power to residential, commercial, and the buildings and towns in the state, I am definitely all for it. So just a little tidbit I had to throw in there. So with that, we will get into today's interview with Chad of Turnkey, Iowa, and the Des Moines, Iowa metropolitan area after a word from our sponsors.
Check out the website simplepassivecashflow.com for podcasts, videos, articles, and free e-courses. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to the team via email, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction, whether it be an educational course or information about syndication deals. If you haven't read my book, The Journey to Simple Passive Cashflow, click the link below to get a free copy. Thanks to John and the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Our team is here to help you take the first step, or if you're a seasoned investor, then we're here to expand your reach into alternative investing.
Hey, Chad, thanks for coming on the show. And how's the balmy weather down in Des Moines right now?
You know what? Well, our high temperature, I think today is going to be 30 degrees higher than yesterday.
Ugh.
So up in the 60s. So that's a sign that spring is at least getting close. We get a taste here and there. How about you?
Yeah, not to be a Debbie Downer, but at the time of this recording, we start at 19 degrees above zero this morning, and we are set for another blizzard of 4 to 8 inches tomorrow through the weekend. So I've been ready for spring since about January.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the additional snow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess for the listeners, we're not actually that far apart geographically. I guess you're probably about 2 hours north of me, and then 2 to 3 north, and then west another hour.
Like I mentioned in the intro, I remember we first met up about 2 years ago. I want to say from Marshall to Des Moines, I want to say it was about 4.5 hour drive for me, give or take.
Yeah.
I could be off a little bit. So.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So
good.
Well, thanks again for taking time out of your schedule, Chad, to come on and educate my listeners. But maybe if we can just kind of take a step back first, can you kind of give us a brief introduction of yourself and how Turnkey Iowa came to fruition, I should say?
Sure. Yeah. So my name, as we've mentioned, is Chad Daniel. My wife and I are the owners of Turnkey Iowa. And we're a small turnkey provider, and I say small relative to some of the companies that are renovating and making 20, 30, 40 turnkey properties per month in some of the other metros. We're well smaller than that, maybe doing 10 to 15 a year, something like that in the Des Moines market. And we're the only turnkey provider that we know of in the Des Moines market. So kind of a niche situation there. We started investing in real estate, about 12 or 13 years ago. I need to get those years burnt into my memory so I can easily repeat them. But somewhere in that range, started investing with an investment group that I've been the president of. That's a local collection of 5 different people where we pooled our brains and our money together, trying to figure out how to invest our money. And I'll trim the story, keep it a little short here. We can dig in more if you want, but
sure.
We experimented with some different things, eventually ended up finding buy and hold real estate as something, that looked really attractive to us. That group has been doing buy and hold real estate since that time. My wife and I, as kind of one member of the group, and then 2 of the other members of the group, basically repeated and done the same thing. So those 3 people have built their own portfolios outside of the investment group, but basically mirroring the same properties, using the same processes, that sort of stuff that we collectively developed. And about 4 years ago, my wife, Chrissy, and I were trying to figure out what the next step was for us, and basically reusing these systems that were working well. And we decided to launch Turnkey Iowa, which is really us using all the things we've learned over the last decade plus in buying and renovating properties and managing them to do it for other people. So now we're doing that as well. And that really is Turnkey Iowa. It's what we did for ourselves, but now a branch where we can extend that offer to other people.
Okay, sounds good. And in those, I know you said roughly 4 years ago when you started Turnkey Iowa. Since then, do you have a running number or here at almost April, but into March of 2023, how many, homes has Turnkey Iowa bought, renovated, and sold to investors?
In total.
In totality,
So
yes, sir.
since we started, yeah, I do have the running total. You don't want to watch me open my Google sheet and like count them. I don't know them off the top of my head, but we're probably in the 30 range, something in that 30 turnkey properties range. We've bought and renovated over 100 houses between the investment group and our own portfolio and turnkey, but turnkey is probably in that 25 to 30 houses sort of range right now.
Okay. Sounds good. Now, and you kind of already answered this question, but just kind of want to reiterate for my listeners where, I've come across numerous promoters, syndicators, and, quote unquote investors where they pitch investment X, whatever it is, a syndication fund, turnkey real estate. But once you dive into it, then you find out, oh, I don't actually invest in this myself. I just pitch this to everyone else. But it sounds like you and your wife have been investors, not only a turnkey real estate, but right in Des Moines, your home market.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. And most of the properties we own are in the Des Moines market where we do turnkey. As I mentioned before we started recording as well, we ended up finding a situation where we were able to buy about 20 condos, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way to you between our two houses. And so that's the main place we have rentals outside of Des Moines right now.
Okay. Yeah. Good old, say, Spirit Lake, I think it was, which is
in Spirit Lake.
Yeah, I think it's about 2 hours straight north. It's been, 12 years since I was last in Spirit Lake, but I think it was about a 2-hour drive from give or take. So.
Yes, the Great Lakes of Iowa. So very much a lake culture and community there.
Yeah. So now, Chad, I've had numerous guests on this show, fellow podcasters, investors, as well as other turnkey companies. And, they're, how do I put this, kind of more sexier or glamorous markets, Memphis, Tennessee, Phoenix, Arizona, Boise, Idaho, Birmingham, Alabama, just to name a couple out there. Yeah. And I've even, from some of my friends were like, ew, Iowa, why would you want to look there? And why specifically Des Moines, Des Moines, Iowa, where is that? What would you say to those maybe skeptical investors out there that just don't even want to look at Iowa? What would be a good reason to look at that and then down further in the Des Moines market?
Sure. So, John, I made a little video about this a couple of years ago, which still holds very true. And I can get you a link to that. We can put it in the show notes, but it's a professional and a bit longer version of me saying what I'm going to say right now. So Des Moines is a niche market, right? So it's not Indianapolis, it's not Kansas City, it's not Birmingham or Memphis. Many of those other places have well more than 50% renters in their metro areas. So just the way the demographics of a lot of those cities are built up, or the areas of certain parts of those cities are built up, they're very high percentage renters.
Okay.
And so you end up with houses in those areas that are essentially like apartments. I mean, almost everyone along the street is a rental. They're very cookie cutter, and nothing against cookie cutter houses, but like they're very similar floor plans. Des Moines is not that. So where we're investing in Des Moines is typically Des Moines proper. We have a lot of suburbs kind of circling Des Moines proper right now with houses built within the last 20 to 40 years. Those typically don't make the best investments. They won't cash flow to support themselves. So if you're purely an appreciation investor, those suburbs might work. But we and almost all the people we work with are focused on either cash flow or, in tough cash flow times like now, properties that at least support themselves from a cash flow point of view. And those houses were typically built in, all the way back. I think our earliest has been 1880. Up to typically like the 1920s or 30s range. And that means the houses are old. Everyone is different. They've had, in some cases, additions added over time and stuff like that. And everyone is unique. So if you buy a property from us, a month from now, and you want the exact same thing 6 months later, probably can't get you that. Because every house is different. And it really comes down to like, how old are all the major systems in that house?
Mhm.
It doesn't have many of the original things from 1880 or
Yeah.
1920 still, right?
You probably
Plumbing,
wouldn't want the
electrical,
original
roof.
things from 1880 at that point.
Right. Yes. So much of that has been upgraded, and we have to go in and build a custom plan for each house, basically to get rid of all the deferred maintenance. We don't want our investors to have any major items within 10 years
Mhm.
of purchase. So electrical, plumbing, HVAC, LVP flooring, vinyl siding, get rid of the wood outside, like all that
Yep.
stuff. And we can go into more detail if you want, but we have to make a custom plan for every house to get it to
Okay.
that level. So all that is to describe Des Moines as a relatively niche market. We've also found with this niche market, our average tenant stay is pretty long. So it's
Okay.
been 5.1 years as our average tenant stay. Sometimes tenants will stay 1 year. And also in a lot of cases, we've had tenants there since we completed the initial renovation.
Wow.
And so my theory behind that, I don't have, all the statistics to prove it, but my theory behind that is the renter can't move to a house across the street or next door or 2 blocks away and find something similar to what they're in today.
Right.
I mean, their job situations can change, their family situation can change, kids being added to the house or kids leaving the house, and then they need something different. But when somebody's happy with the house here in Des Moines, it's not as likely they're going to jump ship to save $25 or $50 per month in rent.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I think, even if you can find, let's just say, $50 a month savings, talking $600 a year. I don't know, and myself included, I don't know a lot of people that are gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna, update my driver's license. I'm gonna update all my mailing information. I'm gonna pack up all my stuff, move it over here,
Right.
unpack it, unbox it, all this to save $600 a year. You're just not gonna do that.
Yes. Yes. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So now, Chad, you had mentioned, obviously, Des Moines is the capital of Iowa, and there's obviously kind of a larger MSA with many suburbs. And I'm probably going to slaughter the pronunciation. So for all the Iowans out there, I apologize in advance, but I believe there's one suburb, Ankeny, that's like one of the fastest growing suburbs of the area. Are you able to speak to that at all? Or maybe first correct me
Yes.
on the pronunciation. I'm sure I
Yes.
slaughtered it.
So it's called Ankeny.
Ankeny. Okay.
Yes, Ankeny. And actually, that's where I'm standing today. So if I
okay.
pop over to the side here and look out the window, I'm viewing a sunny Ankeny right now. But
All right.
yeah, Ankeny is a north suburb of Des Moines. Currently, I'd say they're about 3 to 4 super fast growing suburbs to Des Moines. Ankeny
Okay.
is probably the lead in that pack. Others like Waukee, for example, are also growing super fast.
Okay.
And those are typically not the places we invest because the rent to price ratio
Sure.
doesn't end up making as much sense. It's more newer houses. But yeah, those suburbs have been growing like crazy. And really, I mean, Iowa has like good, hardworking people and affordable home prices. In talking with other people, specifically in industry, we find a lot of companies will try to move production, for example, or call centers to India or to the southern U.S., the Gulf of Mexico states kind of area.
Sure.
And what they find is challenges in like a labor pool that can support their business from a language point of view, from a work motivation point of view, and they end up coming back. So we've had a lot of those come back to the Des Moines Metro and Ankeny as well. We also have a lot of like financial services. So Wells Fargo has a huge campus and headquarters here.
Okay.
Principal Financial, Nationwide Insurance, a lot of those places where you'd have like domestic call centers.
Okay.
Or sort of mid to lower level pay white collar positions.
Sure.
We have a lot of those and also a lot of factories related to farm machinery and construction machinery. Stuff like that are in this area.
Okay. Because if I recall, being in, Southwest Minnesota farm country, John Deere is headquartered in Iowa. Is that correct?
Their corporate headquarters is actually in Moline, if they haven't changed it to Chicago or something like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like just 2 miles away from me here is one of their probably top 5, if not 10 size
Okay.
production plants in the world. And then
Wow.
about an hour and a half away, this is east of us, so in Waterloo, they have another one of the top 5 to 10 production sites. And then in the Quad Cities, where I think you mentioned you've invested.
Yep.
So in
Davenport, correct.
Moline, in Moline and Davenport both, they have some big factories. So
Okay.
people like John Deere, also people like Caterpillar are kind of centered around this Iowa and Illinois area.
Sure. Yep. And for those, since the majority of my listeners are in Southwest Minnesota, if you're familiar with the grocery chain Hy-Vee, which I'm sure, Chad, you probably maybe heard of, I know they're headquartered, at least they were headquartered in Iowa when I worked for them many years ago.
Yeah, in Ankeny, Iowa.
Oh, really? Okay.
And Casey's, do you have Casey's gas stations
Yep.
there?
Casey's
So
gas stations. Yep.
yeah, that's headquartered in Ankeny as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you had mentioned the speed of Ankeny growth earlier. Yeah, Ankeny has been in lots of different, top 3, top 5 fastest growing mid to small size cities in the US for many years now.
Okay.
And really, I think the quality of the workforce plus the affordable housing really comes together to make Central Iowa a successful place for both manufacturing and kind of those mid to lower white collar jobs.
Yeah. Well, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head too, where a lot of times, whether it's a specific niche market or even just an area, if not a lot of people are aware of it, sometimes you can find the, better returns as well. Where, I mentioned before Memphis, where even 4 years ago, it was still kind of under the radar. You could buy homes 1% value, rent to value ratio. Now Memphis is just insanely hot right now. I probably get calls from like 5 wholesalers probably every week wanting to buy one of my homes down there.
Okay. Yes.
Now, Chad, I'm just kind of thinking, I know, the numbers change, and depending on when my listeners will listen to this, and who knows what the Fed's going to do next month when they meet again and raise interest rates, and here we go. But maybe just, no pie in the sky, no, shoot for the moon, anything like that. Just kind of average what you've been seeing for 2023. If an investor comes to you and says, yep, I want to buy one of your homes in the next, 1 to 6 months. Typically, I know you already mentioned this, the average tenant does stay for about 5.1 years. But beyond that, typically, what do you see for purchase prices of homes, on average, and then what the average rents are typically?
Yeah, sure. I just pulled up our website here. So if you see my eyes darting around the screen, that's what I'm doing.
Worries.
So, and I'll just reference what we have for sale now, not in deep detail, but to give you the calibration numbers of today's market. So we have places for sale from basically $200,000 to $225,000.
Okay.
And rents are from about $1,650 to about $1,900 per month. So we are now under that 1% ratio.
Right.
We used to be at or below it like many places, but the quick appreciation in home prices with the rents still lagging some. Like we've seen really strong rent rates, but they haven't caught up to the increases in home prices. So we are under that 1% now.
Sure. Yeah, which I mean, I know it's kind of like a back of the envelope litmus test of should I buy, should I not? And 1% nowadays, maybe 0.8%, even 0.7% sometimes makes sense. But
yeah,
I mean, myself personally, I'm sure you hear it every other day where, oh, there's going to be a real estate crash. I'm just going to wait till the real estate market crashes. It's like, well, this isn't 2008. We're royally undersupplied coast to coast. If anything, I think we might see single digit drops, but more or less just probably a stable, 0 to low growth for the next 5 years. And maybe that will give, time for the rents to increase and keep pace.
Yeah. Yeah. I very much agree with what you just said. And to add to that, we've seen really strong labor markets at the mid to lower income levels.
Okay.
So we've seen a disproportionate gain in wages for those mid to lower income people.
Sure.
And the good news is those are typically our renters.
Okay.
And now they have more income. And so we've ended up with more competitive rents because
Okay.
of that. So if they're going to spend 30% of their income on housing and their
Sure.
income has just gone up, okay.
Yep.
So that has been good. And as long as we continue to see the really tight labor market in that
hmm
demographic area, I think we'll continue to see rents catching up with home prices. Oh, there's something else I was going to mention. Sorry, just a second. Oh, the city just north of me, so about 15 or 20 minutes away from me,
Okay.
has been setting records for lowest unemployment rate in the
Oh,
US
okay.
on and off for the last 5 or so years. Of course,
Okay.
COVID had disruptions for everybody.
Right. Yeah.
But we've had really strong labor market there. That's really hard on the manufacturers, honestly, because they're all competing for
hmm
limited labor in the area, including in Ankeny and Des Moines, because that's very commutable for people. But yeah, we've seen an extremely tight labor market, and that just fuels those wage increases.
Sure.
We were talking about John Deere a little while ago. There was a big UAW, so union negotiation
Oh,
with
yep.
John Deere here in Ankeny 1 to 2 years ago, and some very competitive wage increases came out of that. I'm not sure they were enough now, seeing how
Sure.
inflation has been sticky and not transient,
Yeah.
but some really healthy increases there. And boy, we've just seen that across the market, like in that demographic and also in this geographic area.
No, makes sense. And yeah, and I might just Google and look up that link too. I remember when that whole UAW and
Oh yeah,
can't remember what they agreed to, but like you said, fast forward 2 years, it's like, well, maybe it's not enough now with 6.5 or 7.1 or whatever the official inflation number is.
yes, right,
So
right. Yeah,
I wanted
go
to
ahead.
kind of close out with maybe, is there anything I maybe should have asked about Iowa that I didn't think of, or maybe just, I don't know, interesting trivia about Iowa or Des Moines that you think my listeners would find value in?
Oh, I wasn't prepared with this one, John.
I know.
Uh,
I said I wasn't going to put you on the spot, but I guess I did.
Getting the pronunciation of Des Moines correct is one of the biggest challenges for people who aren't from here. So
Okay.
DES and MOINES is the spelling, and that's, yeah, I think it's a French origination, but it's not at all matching the pronunciation. So that's one thing. The other one, especially as I talk to international people, we mention we're from Iowa, and oh yeah, it's the potato state, right? Well, yeah,
Need to
okay,
add
we
another
can grow
consonant in there
potatoes
and
here,
take one
but
out.
that's Idaho. Yeah. So I don't have anything else in terms of trivia or novel
Okay.
facts, but I will come back to, you mentioned a little bit about what might happen in the housing market. I support what you said. And just to add another detail on top of that for what we're seeing in Des Moines, the transaction volume of houses has gone way down.
hmm
So the number of purchases and sales have gone down.
Yep.
Inventory has in essence been stable at a pretty low level, like for years now, for a couple of
Yep.
years now. And stable is all relative, but at a relatively low historic level. And we've seen prices basically hold firm.
Okay.
So we'll see what the spring market does this year, but we really haven't seen a softening in prices
Okay.
because of the interest rate increases.
Yeah.
We have seen sellers sometimes doing price reductions after
Okay.
it's been on the market a few weeks or 30 days, which
Mhm.
was unheard of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so we've seen a little bit of change, but it is still very much a seller's market in Des Moines.
Yeah.
Like it is tough to find houses.
Yep. Yeah. No. And here in Minnesota, I'm a realtor as well. And it's kind of funny when people ask me, like, well, is there going to be a, softening, or you think we'll get some discounts on the homes? I'm like, well, there already is. You can buy the home at asking price versus offering $30,000
Yes.
above asking price. So
Yes.
therefore, yes, there has been a discount, but
Right.
they
Right.
don't see it that way.
Yeah. And there's, I think it's a really interesting difference. I hadn't thought about this before 2023, but between people that rely on real estate transaction volume for
Mhm.
income, and realtors are an example of that, right? Volume is what drives their business, not
Yep.
so much the price level.
Right.
Where investors, it's more about the price level and
Mhm.
what's the investment worth. And so personally, I hadn't really thought about those two things as being separate before, but there is a very distinct difference between transaction frequency
Yeah.
stability and price stability.
Yeah. Well, and even in the broader market, like you had mentioned, with the Wells Fargo and other financial, organizations being in Iowa, Wells Fargo, I think end of 2022, they had something like 90% less transactions in the hopper than they did at the end of 2021. And,
Wow.
there's
Yeah.
been layoffs because I think so much of the market is, hey, interest rates went from 6 to 5%, refinance. Oh, now they're at
Yes.
4%, refinance. Now they're at 3. Now they're at 6.75. Would you like to refinance and pay more per month? It doesn't quite work that way.
Yes. Not unless I have a really interesting life situation, which forces me to sell.
Yeah. Or, I've had the
Yeah.
mortgage and maybe I'm on my last 3 years or something and I can take out just a bunch of equity and
yeah,
redeploy
right,
elsewhere. I can kind of see that.
Yes.
See that happening.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. And I think that has slowed the transaction volume a lot, right? Just as you've described, nobody wants to refinance or
yeah.
nobody wants to get rid of their current loan and get a new
Yep.
one at today's prevailing rates.
Exactly. So, well, as we close this out, Chad, and again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to, educate my listeners, learn some more about Des Moines and Iowa as well. If anyone out there is listening to this, maybe they've checked out the links in the show notes and, want to either start investing in real estate or maybe continue to grow their portfolio, what's the best way to reach out to you and your company?
Yeah, I'll give you two different really good options. One is to go to our website, which is www.turnkeyiowa.com, and we can have that in the show notes. The other one is to just email me personally.
Okay.
That's chad@turnkeyiowa.com. So CHAD@TURNKEYIOWA.com. And a lot of what we do is helping and educating relatively new investors. If you're a seasoned investor, yes, we can work together, no problem. Though a lot of what we do is educating investors maybe buying their first rental property or their second, third, fourth, fifth rental property. And maybe a third of those people are here in Iowa or the Des Moines metro area. The other 2/3 are remote investors.
Sure.
And so if you're any of those, we're happy to chat. And if we can provide you any value and education, great.
All right. Sounds good. Well, for those listening, as always, I'll have these in a clickable format in the show notes, so you don't have to hit rewind and find a pen and paper while you're driving or whatever you're doing while listening to this. So, Chad, it's been great to catch up. I'm glad things are going well for you in Iowa, and hopefully it'll be 55 here in Minnesota next time we chat.
Yes, I hope at least. Yeah, John, and thanks for doing this and educating your listeners. I think you add a lot of value to them, and yeah, if we can all get the right education, we can be financially successful.
Couldn't agree more. So, yeah, thanks for your time, Chad. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. For more updates, check out www.wealthandfreedomnexus.com. Remember, nothing on this show should be considered tax, legal, investment, or professional advice. This show is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. Please consult an appropriate and licensed tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for specific advice for your situation. For distribution or publication rights or media interviews, please contact the host.